Hello, my name is Courtney Kendler-Giletti, and today I'm going to be talking to you about Tourette syndrome, sometimes referred to in this presentation simply as Tourette's or TS. Over the course of this lesson, I expect that you will be able to describe and have a better understanding of what Tourette syndrome is, give possible causes and characteristics of Tourette syndrome, identify where Tourette's falls under IDEA, and be able to develop and implement teaching and classroom strategies to better support students with Tourette's. I chose to present on Tourette syndrome because I was diagnosed with it as a child. And although I've dealt with this disorder for the better part of my life, there's still so much more I didn't know and wanted to learn. I was diagnosed with Tourette's when I was about 7 years old. My second grade teacher, who had familiarity with the disorder, observed me over the course of many weeks and initially notified my parents when she saw me constantly shaking my head from side to side, also known as ticking, which was at the time blamed on my bangs, according to me. After weeks of collaborative observation between my parents and teacher, I was taken to see a neurologist who officially diagnosed me with Tourette syndrome. Had it not been for that teacher, my diagnosis may have taken much longer. This has really reiterated to me how important, as a teacher, it is to have an understanding of different signs, symptoms of disorders that we may see in our classrooms. Over the following years, I would gain and lose tics, some lasting only months and others lasting for years. Some, which are fortunately less obvious to others, still affect me to this day when I get nervous or anxious. At the time, however, my tics included beating my chest, which caused my mom to have to sew a plush bib I wore under my clothes so I wouldn't break a rib, head shaking, wrist snapping, jaw clicking, and rapid eye, head, and neck movements, which I attribute to my chronic neck and back problems to this day. Thankfully, though, my Tourette's didn't seem to affect my grades or social skills, and therefore, my parents didn't feel the need to pursue an IEP or any other form of special education. So, what is Tourette syndrome? Tourette's is a condition of the nervous system that causes people to have tics, which are either motor or vocal, and are sudden twitches, movements, or sounds that are made repeatedly and uncontrollably. As mentioned, there are two forms of tics, motor and vocal tics. Motor tics are physical movements of the body, like blinking your eyes, shrugging your shoulders, or jerking your head. Vocal tics are sounds that someone makes with their voice, like humming, clearing the throat, or yelling out a word or phrase. Additionally, there are two subsets of these tics, simple and complex. Simple tics involve only a few parts of the body, like squinting or sniffing, while complex tics involve multiple different parts of the body and sometimes have a pattern, like bobbing your head while jerking your arm. Currently, there are no known causes or definitive risk factors that lead to someone having Tourette syndrome, but researchers do suggest that genes play an important role. Studies have indicated that Tourette syndrome can be inherited from a parent, with parents having about a 50% chance of passing that gene onto a child. Research has also shown that boys with these genes are 3 to 4 times more likely to display symptoms of Tourette's than girls. It has also been suggested that Tourette's can be quote unquote triggered by an abnormal metabolism or breakdown of dopamine in the brain, but research is still forthcoming on that. Typically, Tourette's is first noticed in children at about the age of 6 and tends to be most severe between the ages of 10 and 12. Be on the lookout for children who display uncontrollable and persistent motor or vocal tics. The average time from identification to diagnosis of a child with Tourette syndrome is about 2 years. Fortunately for many, the symptoms of Tourette's begin to dissipate in early adulthood and sometimes disappear altogether. A common misconception that has been falsely portrayed and sensationalized in the media is the idea that all people with Tourette syndrome have involuntary outbursts of obscene words, which is actually called coprolalia, or that they constantly repeat what people say, otherwise known as euchalalia. In reality, only a small number of people with Tourette's, about 10%, show these symptoms. To this day, I still cringe every time I see a TV show or movie where this is portrayed, or when a friend who's ill-informed makes a comment about Tourette's and swearing. This just enforces the fact that people and teachers can be better informed about disorders like Tourette syndrome. Did you know that the estimated prevalence of Tourette syndrome ranges from 3 to 8 per 1,000 school-aged children, and that of those children, boys are 3 times more likely to have Tourette's than girls? Researchers are not exactly sure why boys are more likely to have Tourette's, but I'm pretty excited to learn more in the coming years should more research be done. I also found it interesting that 5 out of 6 children with Tourette's have also been diagnosed with at least one other mental, behavioral, or developmental disorder, with more than a third of those having OCD or ADHD comorbidities. This rings true to my case, as I've also been diagnosed with ADHD and anxiety, as well as my Tourette's. While there's currently no cure for Tourette syndrome, medications and behavioral therapies have been shown to help alleviate symptoms. There have also been new advances in treatments like median nerve stimulation, which administers repetitive electrical stimulation to the median nerve in order to help suppress movements or tics associated with Tourette's. There are also new assistive technologies that are available for students who display motor tics that make it difficult to read or write, like recording devices and word processors like speech-to-text software. Under IDEA, or the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, Tourette syndrome is classified as an other health impairment, making those with Tourette's eligible to receive special education benefits if, among other things, it is shown that the student's educational performance is being adversely affected by their Tourette syndrome. It is more common, though, for students with Tourette's to receive an IEP if their disorder coexists with another, like OCD or ADHD. Students with Tourette syndrome may benefit from simply having a 504 plan. Aside from assistive technologies that I mentioned, there are many teaching and classroom strategies you can use to support children with Tourette's. These include helping to reduce anxiety and stress in the classroom and identifying any skills deficit a student might have that are increasing that stress and anxiety. Ignoring Tourette symptoms that can be ignored as not to draw attention that is unwanted to the student from their peers, providing extra time and a separate testing location for students, offering a safe space where students can go to release their symptoms, brainstorming possible solutions with the students, and finally, educating other students in class about Tourette syndrome. My 4th grade teacher did this with my class, and they were able to learn about Tourette's and ask questions. And in the end, it made my Tourette seem less strange and taboo for my classmates. So, what have you learned about Tourette syndrome? To wrap this all up, take a few minutes to see if you can answer the following questions based off of what you learned in this lesson. First, can you list 2 possible causes of Tourette syndrome? Second, can you explain what Tourette syndrome is if you were describing it to someone who had never heard of it before? And third, can you demonstrate your understanding of the teaching and classroom strategies presented by explaining how you could effectively incorporate some of them into your classroom? Check out some of the following resources for more information about Tourette syndrome, research, and support. Thank you so much for taking the time to learn more about Tourette syndrome. I hope you learned something new and can use some of the information and strategies from this lesson in your classroom to continue supporting students with Tourette syndrome.